Welcome back to another one of the SNG hot takes conversations that we're having around topics that the panelists are going to be talking about and bringing thought leaders together. Today we have John, Colin, and Rob. They're going to give us their impressions and their thoughts around this topic. So the discussion that's going to happen is it's around the CTO and the tech horizon. So they have three CTOs, one from Assa Abloy, one from Phoenix, and one from Linnell S2 that are going to get together and talk about three different things. They're going to talk about the top trends that they see. They're going to talk about how they're leveraging tech during the pandemic. And they're going to talk about the impacts from the consumer space that they're seeing in the commercial space. So it'll be interesting to see CTOs have a conversation about that, especially three heavy commercial companies talk about the consumer space. But it's overall about trends, and it's about the impacts that they're having. So let's start with Colin. I'll start with you. What do you think a trend is that's impacting the industry right now?
I mean, as it relates to the CTOs in technology, I think a lot of it is around device security, and as connectivity changes and more devices come on, and we see ecosystems explode. The security of that device communication to some of these clouds, cloud has been around for a while, and it used to be cloud security was a big focus. Now you're seeing all these different gadgets and other devices coming on. So maintaining that security, and I think that really does tie into the consumer side of things and how the consumer space is impacting our commercial space, because some of those technology devices are coming from that consumer space and finding use cases now in the commercial space. And so I think how a platform enables those devices to come on board but maintains a level of security is a thing that I would like to learn more about and hear how these folks are responding to that.
I love it. Great. So John, why don't you go next?
Yeah, and I agree with Colin on his point for the commercial space influencing or the consumer space rather influencing this. I mean, we're seeing it more recently with, Amazon is always playing in that area and kind of kicking around ideas, and they're big enough to come in and gobble things up. ADT, and I think it was Google, made a strategic partnership recently, which, shook things up a little bit, right? So and the trends and I think Colin could attest to this, the trends that we see in kind of smart home security actually lead the commercial space. It kind of happens there first, and then it's like, can we scale this up? So it'll be interesting if they talk about that and how that'll start to influence what people, especially because we've been in our homes for so long. So if I'm at home and I'm doing all this stuff all the time, I'm like, man, I want to do this in my office. Why can't I do this in my office? So we may see the work from home trends as people go back to work influence what the buying habits are for the people who are making these buying decisions. But technology trends, where I want to see what I want to see them talk about is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, and actually talk about it, not just use the buzz terms, but like how is it going to be used to make the security industry move forward, and how can it actually add value? Not just like, hey, we have AI in our cameras, because that doesn't mean anything. But tell me, what are you actually doing in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's getting past the mega. It's just not a mega trend anymore. It's like, okay, so how are you exercising it? So yeah, 100% with you. Rob, what do you think?
I got two things. I think the first is actually the merger of the logical access and physical access, specifically as it relates to the technologists, the CTOs. They've had logical access, and they've been leveraging that for quite some time, and certainly with dual auth on our apps and dual auth on just simply using our business tools. It's going to continue to migrate and use that strength with physical access. And then the second trend that I'd like to hear more about is actually platforming of IoT. And we will continue to add more and more and more devices. All of our devices in the physical security world are conceptually IoT devices, and leveraging those devices and enabling platforming from whether it be third-party platforms or the leveraging of all these IoT devices to create some positive ends to a means.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, so my takeaway on it is I think we're at sort of this flipping that's happening in the marketplace, and I'm curious is that from a CTO, from a technology standpoint, moving to a software-centric industry where the hardware supports the software versus the software supporting the hardware, and that is sort of the mindset change that happens. And it's interesting that you have 3 CTOs. If you fast forward 5 years from now, it'd probably be an entire room full of CTOs in a lot of ways, right? So I just think the importance of what they do versus just the mechanical side. I just think the software end of that not being necessarily a trend anymore, and maybe that's the trend, is that the trend ended on that, right? And it's now a fundamental piece of the industry, and it's no longer, we all know the days you walk into ISC West and you had all these signage that talked about cloud-based access control systems where the architecture of the system was the differentiator of it. Like, I think we're done on that end. So I think that's a trend. I'm curious to see how companies respond now, because they're going to have to start acting software-centric, which is not easy just to do overnight. So cool. Well, thank you both. Thank you, all 3 of you. Just 2 of you. I only thank 2 of you. 1 of you, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. But no, thank you very much. So, Security Ground, October 21st, 22nd. One of the subjects I'll be talking about. Appreciate the 3 of you coming on with your thought leadership and sharing your views. So, thank you very much for doing that.